No one showed up to my grandma's 79th birthday. I drove 3 hours and found her alone with melted candles. The next day, a lawyer knocked and handed me a folder that changed everything. She had baked her own birthday cake. That was the first thing I saw when I walked through the back door at 7:43 p.m. on a Thursday in October. A 2-layer vanilla cake on the kitchen table. Buttercream roses piped along the top edge with the careful hand of a woman who had been decorating cakes since 1971. 79 candles in the frosting, most of them melted down to stumps. Wax pooled in pale yellow rings around each base. 8 place settings. Good china, the kind she only brought out for occasions. Cloth napkins folded into triangles. Ice cream, sweating through the carton onto the tablecloth. The carton had been out long enough to warp the paper. My grandmother was sitting at the head of the table in her good blouse, hands folded in her lap, looking at the cake. She looked up when I came in. Her face reorganized itself quickly. Surprise, then something that tried to be neutral, then something she gave up on hiding entirely. "Nora," she said, "you drove 3 hours. I finished my shift at 4, I said. Traffic was fine. Neither of those things was a lie, technically. The drive had taken 3 hours and 12 minutes, and I had broken 2 separate traffic laws to make it by 7. I put my bag down. I sat across from her. I looked at the 8 place settings and the melted candles and the warped ice cream carton, and I made a decision right there to not say a single word about any of it. "Did you eat?" I asked. "I waited," she said, then quieter. "I thought someone might still come." I got up and found a lighter in the kitchen drawer. I lit every surviving wick on the cake, 15 candles approximately, the ones that had enough wax left to catch. Then I turned off the overhead light. "Make a wish," I said. She laughed. "A real one. Small, but real." She made her wish. She blew them out. I served us both a slice and a scoop of the mostly melted ice cream, and we sat in her kitchen and ate birthday cake at 7:51 p.m. while the October wind moved through the oak tree outside the window, and I told myself the tightness in my chest was just the drive. It wasn't just the drive. The next morning, 2 strangers knocked on her door, and everything my family had been quietly building, while my grandmother sat alone at a birthday table they couldn't be bothered to attend, came apart in a single conference room. Let me tell you what I do for a living, because it matters more than anything else in this story. I am a paralegal at Whitmore & Associates, a firm that specializes in elder law in Hartford, Connecticut. I have been there for 6 years. I handle wills, trusts, guardianship filings, powers of attorney, Medicaid planning, capacity evaluations, the full architecture of what happens to people and their assets when they get old and the people around them start calculating what they might inherit. I know this work the way surgeons know anatomy. Not because I have a law degree, I don't, though I have been taking night classes for 2 years toward one, but because I have sat across from enough families to understand how they operate under pressure, which families protect their elders, which families circle. My family called me the paperwork one. My mother, Diane, had a way of tilting her head at dinner parties when the conversation turned to what everyone did professionally, and saying, "Nora is still doing her little legal assistant thing," the way someone says still playing guitar about a 40-year-old who never made it into a band. She had been saying it for 6 years. I had stopped correcting her after the 3rd year, because correcting her required a level of engagement that I had decided to stop offering. My brother Aaron, 3 years older, had been in commercial real estate development since his late 20s. He had a company. The company had a name, Stonewall Capital Group, that sounded solider than it was. Aaron drove a truck that was newer every 18 months and lived in a house in Glastonbury that had, in my estimation, about 14 months of runway between current income and structural crisis. I had never said this to anyone. I had simply noted it, the way I noted everything. Filed and dated and held for when it might become relevant. My grandmother, Loretta Voss, had lived in the same house in Wethersfield for 41 years. A 1970s colonial on a half-acre lot, 3 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, a kitchen that she had remodeled in 1998, and maintained with the particular precision of a woman who understood that good things lasted if you took care of them. She had a neurologist, a primary care physician, a Tuesday bridge club, and opinions about garden soil that she delivered with the confidence of someone who had been right about garden soil for longer than most people had been alive. She also had, as I would learn the morning after her birthday, a lawyer she had hired 14 months earlier without telling anyone in the family. I had noticed nothing. I want to be honest about that. I drove up to see her every 6 weeks. I called every Sunday at 3. I brought her plants in April and helped rake the yard in November, and I had noticed nothing. The signs were there. I just hadn't been reading them right. The first sign I had missed came 7 months before her birthday, at Easter dinner. My parents had hosted, my mother in her cashmere and church pearls, the dining room set with the good silver, Aaron and his wife Kristen with their 2 kids running through the house in a way that my mother found charming rather than chaotic because they were Aaron's children. My grandmother arrived at 12:30, pressed slacks, pearl earrings, a bottle of Riesling she had selected herself. At some point during the meal, my father, Gerald, quiet, the kind of man who exists primarily as a supporting character in whatever story my mother is telling, mentioned offhandedly that the Hendersons down down the street had listed their house. Good time to sell, he said. Market strong. My grandmother had set down her fork. I'm not selling, she said. Not defensive, just clear. The way she was clear about garden soil. My mother had laughed. No one said anything about selling, Mom. Good, my grandmother said. She picked up her fork, just making sure we all understand that. I had thought at the time that it was a grandmother being slightly prickly about independence. An older woman asserting herself at a table where she had started to feel peripheral. I had filed it under family dynamics and moved on. I should have filed it under she knows something I don't. The second sign came 2 months later, in June, when Aaron called me. Aaron almost never called me. We texted occasionally, obligatory birthday messages, and the periodic link to something he thought was funny that never quite was. A phone call was irregular enough that I answered in the middle of reviewing a guardianship filing. He said, "Have you noticed Gran seems more confused lately?" I said, "Not particularly. Why?" He said, "She forgot my birthday last month, sent the card late, and she mixed up some dates when I called her last week. I'm just keeping an eye on it." I said that was probably worth mentioning to her doctor. He said, "Yeah, I'll look into it." Then, "Do you know if she's updated her estate documents recently? Her will and stuff?" I had let a beat of silence go by. "Why?" I said. "Just being responsible," he said. "If she starts declining, someone needs to have things in order. She has a primary care physician and a neurologist," I said. "Dr. Francis Okafor is her GP. If there are capacity concerns, that's who to call." Aaron said, right, good point." He moved on. I moved on. But I had heard it. The specific texture of that question. "Do you know if she's updated her estate documents recently?" Coming from the mouth of a man whose company had a name that sounded more stable than it was. I had heard it, and I had set it down and not picked it back up, because I did not want to believe that what I was hearing was what I was hearing. That was my mistake. The third sign was September. My grandmother had a brief hospitalization. 3 days, confusion, and disorientation that her neurologist attributed to a UTI causing acute delirium, which is more common in elderly patients than most families understand. She was discharged with a treatment plan and a follow-up appointment. I drove up the weekend after she came home. She was tired but sharp, telling me about the food in the hospital with the precise, critical vocabulary of a woman who had been an excellent cook for 6 decades. I had been relieved. I had told myself she was fine. She was fine. That part was true. What I didn't know was that somewhere in that 3-day window while she was hospitalized and not fully herself, a document had been placed in front of her. I found out about that document later in a conference room when I compared signatures. The two strangers knocked at 9:17 a.m. on the morning of my grandmother's birthday. I was in the kitchen making coffee, still in yesterday's clothes, having slept on the fold-out couch because I wasn't going to drive 3 hours home at 8 at night after birthday cake. My grandmother was upstairs getting dressed. I could hear her moving around, the deliberate, unhurried sound of her morning routine. I answered the door. A woman in her late 50s, charcoal blazer, reading glasses pushed up on her head, a leather portfolio under her arm. Beside her, a man in his 40s holding a briefcase with the specific aura of a notary. Patient, official, not personally invested in whatever was about to happen. "You must be Nora," the woman said. "I'm Ruth Adler. I'm your grandmother's attorney." I had heard of Ruth Adler the way you hear of people who are good at the same thing you do from the outside, by reputation, before you meet them. She had 23 years in elder law, had been named one of Connecticut's top estate planning attorneys 3 times in the Hartford Business Journal, and was known in my professional circles for taking on cases that other firms considered too complicated or too contentious. "Come in," I said. She set a sealed manila envelope on the kitchen table. My grandmother's signature ran across the flap in the looping hand I recognized from birthday cards my entire childhood. The capital L with its exaggerated downward tail, the deliberate pressure of someone who had been taught penmanship when it was still considered important. "She asked me to deliver this personally," Ruth said, "and to ask you specifically not to discuss it with your parents before we've had a chance to talk." I looked at the envelope, then up at Ruth. "How long have you been working with her?" I asked. 14 months, Ruth said. 14 months. Quick pause. "If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. Since last August, 2 months before the hospitalization, 1 month before Aaron had called me asking about estate documents." "She came to you alone?" I said. "Entirely alone," Ruth confirmed. "Pressed slacks, pearl earrings." She sat in my office for 2 hours and told me exactly what she needed and exactly why she needed it before her window closed. I opened the envelope. Inside, 4 documents, a recorded trust deed, a durable power of attorney naming me as agent, a physician's capacity evaluation signed by Dr. Francis Okafor, dated August 14th, a full month before my grandmother's hospitalization, and a handwritten note on cream paper in that same looping hand. "Nora, when they come for the house, open this. Everything you need is here. It has to be you. You're the only one in this family who will know what to do with it." I read it twice. My grandmother appeared in the doorway in her pressed slacks and pearl earrings. "You didn't seem surprised," she said. "I should have known sooner," I said. She came to the table and sat down. "I didn't want to involve you until the documents were solid. You would have worried." She looked at the envelope. "Is everything in order?" I looked at Ruth. Ruth said, "Everything is in order. I want to walk you through the trust deed because understanding it is understanding everything." 14 months earlier, Loretta Voss had walked into Ruth Adler's office and done something that most people don't do until it's too late. She had looked clearly at the people around her, assessed what they were capable of, and acted while she still had full legal capacity ability to do so. The house, 214 Birchwood Drive, Wethersfield, Connecticut, assessed at approximately $480,000, with a likely market value closer to $530,000 given comparable sales, had been transferred into an irrevocable trust. The trust's terms were specific. The property could not be sold without the consent of the successor trustee. The successor trustee was me, not my parents, not Aaron, me. On the same day the trust was executed, Dr. Francis Okafor, my grandmother's primary care physician of 11 years, board certified in geriatric medicine, affiliated with Hartford Medical Center, had conducted a formal capacity evaluation. The documentation was thorough: 2 pages of clinical observation, standardized testing results, a signed attestation that Loretta Voss was fully oriented, demonstrated intact recall, and had articulated a clear understanding of the documents she was executing and their legal implications. My grandmother had engineered this with the precision of a woman who had been watching her family for a long time and understood exactly what they would do when the moment came. She had just needed someone to open the folder when it arrived. I found the lockbox that same afternoon, a realtor's combination lock, the kind with a 4-digit code, clamped to the gas meter behind the hydrangeas on the side of the house. My grandmother didn't mention it. I found it because I was walking the property out of the same instinct that makes me walk every room of a client's house when I'm doing an estate intake, just to understand the geography. She gave me the code when I came back inside. 1945, the year she was born. Inside the lockbox, a purchase and sale agreement. Cash offer, 30-day close. Buyer, Stonewall Capital Group, Aaron's company. The seller's representative line did not list my grandmother's name. It listed Aaron Voss. Closing target, November 15th, 3 weeks away. The purchase price was $478,000, $50,000 below current market, the kind of number that looks like a courtesy to a relative while functioning as a discount to the buyer. I sat down on the back porch step with the agreement in my hands, and I let myself feel, for exactly 4 minutes, the full weight of what I was reading. Then I took a photograph of every page on my phone, put the documents back in the lockbox, replaced the lock, and went inside to call my mother. Diane answered on the second ring, which meant she was available and in a good mood, both of which I had expected given that her Instagram had shown her and my father at a Mountain Lodge dining room the previous evening with the caption "Altitude Attitude." "Sweetheart," she said. "How's Gran?" "She's fine," I said. "Mom, there's a purchase agreement in a lockbox at her house. Aaron's company is listed as the seller's representative. The closing is in 3 weeks." A pause. "That's being handled," my mother said, not flustered, prepared. She had the tone she used when she had already rehearsed the conversation. "She doesn't know the house is being sold," I said. "Does she?" A longer pause. Then, in a lower voice that she perhaps intended to be confidential, and landed instead as simply revealing, "Nora, she won't remember the house by Christmas." I stared at the kitchen wall. "Her neurologist does not believe she is near that stage of decline," I said. "Her neurologist doesn't live with her. Your father and I have been watching this for a long time. Aaron needs this. The company is in a difficult stretch, and the house can fund a proper care facility for Gran and help your brother through a rough patch at the same time. It's practical. It's not legal," I said. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "Your brother has handled the paperwork." I thought about the September power of attorney that Ruth had mentioned, the one that had been obtained during my grandmother's hospitalization. I thought about what a signature looked like when a woman who was fully oriented signed it versus what it looked like when she was febrile and confused and someone placed a pen in her hand and pointed to the line. "I'll talk to you soon, Mom," I said. I hung up, picked up Ruth's card, called her. "The closing is November 15th, I said when she answered. "Conference room B, I assume. The title company Aaron uses is Hartford Title and Trust." "I know," Ruth said. "I've been expecting your call." "What did they use to try to supersede the trust?" I asked. "A power of attorney, executed September 9th, the day after my grandmother was admitted, while she was running a fever of 103 and couldn't reliably identify what month it was." "Compare the signatures," I said. "I already have," Ruth said. "I have both originals, August and September. You'll want to see them side by side." I drove to her office that afternoon. She laid both documents on the conference table under good light. August, my grandmother's signature in full, confident, looping, the capital L with its exaggerated tail, the letters connected with the fluid pressure of a woman in complete possession of her hand. September, something else entirely. Letters that didn't fully connect, a baseline that drifted downward, the L barely recognizable, a signature that looked like someone trying to remember how their name was spelled while in significant physical distress. 2 completely different hands, one belonging to a woman who understood exactly what she was signing, one belonging to a woman who had been told where to press down. I sat with both documents for a long time. "We also have Dr. Okafor's August capacity letter," Ruth said, "and I've requested a current evaluation confirming that your grandmother's current cognitive status renders any document signed after September 1st of this year legally voidable." "Who did you request it from?" I asked. "Dr. Okafor. And I've also contacted Dr. James Whitley, a geriatric psychiatrist at Hartford Medical Center with 17 years of forensic capacity assessment experience. He reviewed the September signature and the hospitalization records this week." She paused. "His written opinion is that the September document was executed during a period of documented acute medical delirium. His opinion is that it is legally void." I looked at her. "You've been building this for 3 weeks," I said. "Your grandmother called me the day after she was discharged, Ruth said. She knew what had been put in front of her. She wasn't entirely sure what she had signed, but she knew something had happened. I thought about my grandmother. 3 days after being hospitalized, calling her lawyer from her kitchen phone with the same quiet determination that had sent her to that office 14 months earlier in pressed slacks and pearl earrings. My son will do whatever Diane tells him, and Diane will sell the house the minute I can't stop her. She had seen it coming so far in advance that she had built the entire defense before the attack began. November 15th, Conference Room B, Hartford Title and Trust, 2 p.m. I arrived at 1:40 with Ruth and the folder. We took seats on the same side of the table. Ruth laid her portfolio open without any ceremony. The title officer, a woman named Cynthia Marsh, who had been in real estate title work for 19 years and had the carefully professional affect of someone who had seen family transactions go sideways before, was already in the room. She looked at me when I sat down, then at Ruth, and something in her expression recalibrated almost imperceptibly. My family arrived at 1:55. Aaron came first, with a realtor I didn't recognize, and a buyer's representative from Stonewall Capital, a man in his 40s who had the particular energy of someone who had done this kind of transaction many times and expected it to be over quickly. Then my parents. My mother in her cashmere blazer and church pearls, the full presentation deployed. My father behind her, which was where he usually was. My mother saw me and stopped in the doorway. "What are you doing here?" "Taking a seat," I said. She crossed to the table and sat down without another word. Her jaw had the set it got when she was recalculating. Ruth opened her portfolio. She produced 3 documents and laid them on the center of the table, one at a time, carefully aligned, centered, and square, the way documents are laid when their contents are not in question. First, the recorded trust deed, filed with the town of Wethersfield on August 16th of the previous year, recorded in the land records, a public document. Second, the durable power of attorney naming me as agent, executed the same date, witnessed and notarized. Third, 2 capacity evaluations side by side. Dr. Okafor's August letter confirming full capacity. Dr. Aki Whitley's current evaluation. James Whitley, MD, geriatric psychiatry, Hartford Medical Center, 17 years of forensic capacity assessment, confirming that my grandmother's current cognitive status made any documents executed after her September hospitalization legally voidable under Connecticut statute, plus his written opinion on the September power of attorney. Ruth did not say anything while Cynthia Marsh read. We just waited. Cynthia set the trust deed down. She looked at her own file, then she looked at the realtor. "Ms. Voss," she said carefully, "you informed me when we spoke last week that the trust on this property had been dissolved. The realtor, whose name I later learned was Patricia Voss, no relation, hired 6 weeks ago, went the particular color of someone who has just realized they were given information that was not accurate. I was told," she began. "The trust was not dissolved," Cynthia said, in a tone that was purely professional and completely devastating. "It is a recorded, irrevocable trust. I cannot close this transaction." Silence. Then Aaron. His chair scraped back. His fists hit the armrests. "I have a $740,000 payment due in 6 weeks. I have investors. I have Mr. Voss." Ruth's voice, level and quiet. The documents speak for themselves. The buyer's representative closed his portfolio, stood up, walked out without a word. No drama, no speech. He simply left because he was a businessman and the business was over. Aaron looked at me. His face was doing several things simultaneously, none of them flattering. My mother stood. The pearls caught the fluorescent light as she rose. "After everything I have done for this family," she said, to the room in general, and no one in particular, in the voice she used when she was performing for an audience that was no longer watching, "to be treated this way. You had her sign documents during a hospital stay." My voice was the volume of a normal conversation, not raised. There was no need to raise it. "You lied to the title company about the status of the trust. You priced her home $50,000 below market value. And you left her alone at a birthday table with melted candles because Aspen had good snow." My mother's mouth opened. "You don't get to decide what she's worth," I said. I stood up, picked up my folder, looked at Cynthia Marsh, who was writing something in her file with the careful neutrality of a professional who is going to document this thoroughly. "Thank you," I said to Ruth. We walked out. The November air outside Hartford Title and Trust was cold and clean and smelled like wood smoke from somewhere down the block. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment and breathed it in. Ruth came to stand beside me. "What happens to Aaron?" I asked. "That depends on what Cynthia files," she said. "Misrepresentation to a title company is not a small thing. I've sent a summary of the September document situation to the Connecticut Office of Elder Services. Whether that becomes an elder financial exploitation investigation is not within my control." She paused. "But the file is thorough." "It would be," I said. I drove back to Wethersfield. My grandmother was in the kitchen when I let myself in, working on something at the counter. A pie, it turned out. Apple. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and butter and the particular warmth of an oven that has been on for an hour. She looked up. "How did it go?" she asked. "The closing didn't happen," I said. "The house is yours. I'm the successor trustee of record. No one can sell it without me." She turned back to the counter, crimped the pie edge with her thumb. "I know," she said. "That's why I planned it." I sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where 2 weeks earlier, I had lit 15 surviving birthday candles in the dark. Gran, I said, why didn't you tell me earlier, a year ago, when you first went to Ruth? She was quiet for a moment, working the crust. Because I needed you not to know, she said. If you knew, you would have confronted your mother. And if your mother knew you were involved, she would have moved faster. She placed the pie in the oven, closed the door, turned around. I needed them to think they had time, and I needed you to walk in that room today without having carried it for a year. I looked at her. You strategized around me, I said. I know your strengths, she said. You're very good at walking into a room with a folder when you've had one night to process instead of 12 months to second guess. She sat down across from me. Also, I didn't want to upset you. I put my head in my hands, not from distress, from something that was almost close to laughing. The birthday cake, I said. What about it? Did you know I was coming? She was quiet for a moment. I hoped, she said. I didn't call because I didn't want to impose, but I set 8 places. She paused. I always set 8, in case someone comes. 6 months later, my grandmother is still in her house on Birchwood Drive. The hardwood floors are still original. The kitchen was remodeled in 1998, and she maintains it with the same precision she always has. Her Tuesday Bridge Club meets in her dining room on the 2nd and 4th weeks of the month. Dr. Okafor monitors her cognition at 6-month intervals, and her last evaluation in March was stable. I visit every 3 weeks now, not out of obligation, out of the specific and clarifying knowledge that some people are worth the 3-hour drive, and that I spent a long time visiting every 6 weeks when I should have been visiting every 3. The Connecticut Office of Elder Services opened a formal inquiry into the September power of attorney in December. I gave a recorded statement in January. Ruth Adler submitted the complete documentation package, both signatures, Dr. Whitley's forensic capacity opinion, the hospitalization records, under case reference number. I am not going to repeat here because it is an active file and I know better. Aaron's company did not survive. The $740,000 payment came due in December, and the investors did not extend. Stonewall Capital Group filed for dissolution in February. I know this the way I know most things, through the public record, which does not require anyone's permission to be true. My parents and I have not had a real conversation since November. My mother called twice in December. I let it go to voicemail both times. The messages were about the family and how hard this had all been, and how she hoped I understood that everything had been done with the right intentions. I listened to both messages once. Then I saved them to a folder and made no response. My grandmother does not ask me about my parents. I do not tell her what to feel. She has her bridge club and her garden and her kitchen and 41 years in a house that is exactly where she left it. She baked a pie last Sunday when I came to visit, rhubarb this time. She made enough for 2. She set 2 places. We ate at the same table where the birthday candles had melted into the frosting, and outside the kitchen window the oak tree was coming back into leaf, and she told me about her garden soil, the specific and confident opinions of a woman who has been right about garden soil longer than most people have been alive. I listened to every word. She had protected herself before anyone thought to protect her, and she had trusted me with the folder before I even knew there was a storm.